everyone, I'm WABC Chief Meteorologist Lee Goldberg. This is Wake Up Weather on ABC7 NY and For Weather or Not, sponsored by TD Bank. Well, it's the same dry story as we continue to dodge the raindrops. We had the 12th straight dry day on Thursday, making it 18 out of 19 September days without measurable rainfall, and we're going to continue this stretch into the weekend. In fact, the dry streak could actually last into early next week. I mean, 16, 17 days by the time some rain starts to approach by Tuesday night or Wednesday. Now, there is the threat of some showers just brushing the area basically over the next few days. On Friday, it would be in the east end of Long Island, predominantly in the morning hours, but there might be a shower threat into the day. And then there's a low risk on Saturday. Again, it would be mainly Connecticut and Long Island, a stray shower. And then at night, there's a system off to the west that might try to drop a shower across our western suburbs, across western New Jersey. But overall, most of you are going to get through the weekend without a drop of rainfall. The extended forecast. We will have a trend down in temperatures. We'll have a cool autumn breeze coming in over the weekend. So our peak warmth, we hit the mid-80s on Thursday. We're just going to step it down through the 70s and maybe even struggle to 70 by the time we get to Sunday and into Monday as well. So fall will certainly feel the part. Now, even though we're not getting a lot of rain, we still have a low that's swirling out over the Atlantic, southeast of New England. We've just come off our full harvest moon, so our coastal issues are still very real and can be realized with some minor to isolated moderate flooding into Friday, and likely these will be extended into the upcoming weekend, especially over parts of New Jersey. Some minor to isolated moderate coastal flooding. That could happen on the south shore of Nassau County too, and we have some coastal flood watches just for that ongoing threat through the upcoming weekend. Again, we've got some bonus beach weather, but the rip currents are really dangerous. A high risk of rip currents. Water temperatures are not far from about 70 degrees. The high risk of rip currents at least goes through later in the day on Friday. Our visibilities will continue to be good, though. So looking at our futurecast, we're seeing this wall of heavy rainfall. We keep watching on radar, and it looks rather threatening because it's so close, but it's just offshore. And it's bringing rain to places like Cape Cod and into Nantucket and Martha's Vineyard, even close to Block Island. And by the time we get to Friday morning, there's definitely another wave, another push back to the west of at least some cloud cover into parts of Connecticut and Long Island, and maybe a break-off shower does reach the east end. Whereas our western suburbs could be mainly clear to partly cloudy. We start out in the 50s. And we warm things up. It's a little breezy out of the northeast. There are a few more clouds mixing in, so it's not as warm. But we're looking at basically low 70s on the east end, mid 70s Connecticut, central Long Island, down the shore upper 70s. We might touch an 80-degree temperature across interior parts of New Jersey. As we go through Friday night and Saturday, it's the same story. Essentially, we've got this low offshore and another system to the west, and we're in kind of this zone of what we call subsidence, which is sinking air, and in kind of a sweet spot in between these two systems. So it just favors a mix of sun and clouds on Saturday, definitely a little breezy. We start out in the 50s and 60s, and during the day, yeah, there'll be some waves of clouds from time to time, and it will be a little cooler, low and mid 70s, but still a very pleasant day. So when we watch Saturday's forecast, outside of seeing maybe a stray shower east first thing, later in the day and at night, a warm front is trying to inch eastward from the Great Lakes and the Ohio Valley. And there is some indication that showers are going to dive across the I-81 corridor into eastern Pennsylvania. And maybe Saturday night into early Sunday morning, some of those showers could reach, let's say, Hunterdon County, Mercer County, maybe even down to southern New Jersey. So it's an outside chance, but we might have a shower that reaches parts of our western suburbs. It's more likely it stays toward the Philly area. After that morning threat, though, high pressure that's over eastern Canada basically noses back down into the northeast, gives us cool breezes and dries us out. It's a mix of sun and clouds. Fall will arrive at 8:43 in the morning, the autumnal equinox. On Monday, high pressure is still in control, but a lot of high clouds are starting to stream in from the west. So figure it's more of a filtered sunshine that day. And that may be a day where we struggle to get to 70 degrees, even though it's dry. It's a mix of sun and clouds. And then that warm front starts to get closer, and we might be able to fend off the showers during the daylight hours. But I do think either late in the day and at night, some showers get in here. And then this system doesn't want to leave us for a few days, and we may get into an unsettled rainy stretch. Now, certainly that's what it looked like last week for the second half of this week. So I'll almost believe it when I see it in terms of the rain threat. But right now it does look like we get unsettled in early next week. Even if you look at the steering winds, after we have this nice ridge of high pressure over the weekend and into early next week, there is a trough or a dip in the jet stream over central Canada that's starting to reach into the northeast, ultimately getting us unsettled starting Tuesday night into Wednesday with the shower threat. And then what happens is we have what may be a cutoff low starting to form over the area. And what a cutoff low is, essentially, it's basically separating from the main steering winds, kind of beating to its own drum, and it gives you a persistent stretch of potentially unsettled weather. Now, the positioning of this upper low is going to be key. Even earlier today, it looked like it might be over us. If it's to our west, we'll have to see. We may not be in a constant rainfall. That may be off to our north and west, but we may have some waves of showers second half of next week into next weekend. Overall, from the Climate Prediction Center, we still have a signal to finish off the month of September into early October with above normal conditions. But it looks like that above normal trend is, the signal's a lot stronger into northernmost New England, and we're a little closer to near normal temperatures, which are basically going down through the mid and ultimately lower 70s. And you can see our trend after we get through a little bit of warmth in the beginning of the weekend, kind of hovering around 70, maybe even into the 60s midweek as we start to get unsettled, and then essentially seasonable, maybe even slightly above average as we go into the following weekend. In terms of precipitation, obviously this is now getting to be a concern. We're going to run on 2 weeks plus of dry weather, and overall the precipitation signal is a little encouraging with slightly above normal conditions as we go into late September and early October. So let's address the drought monitor, which is updated every Thursday. Now we're in not only dry conditions southern half of New Jersey, but officially in drought conditions over parts of, let's say, Burlington County, inching closer to Ocean County, where we of course have experienced wildfires as of late. When you look at the overall rainfall right now, you're only looking at a little less than a quarter of an inch of rainfall for the entire month for Central Park. That's a departure of nearly 2.5 inches. And how about Newark and Islip? Under a tenth of an inch of rainfall all month long. So for the month of September, we're below average. Our surplus from the year is shrinking. Our reservoirs, the gap is definitely lowering. We were somewhere like 4 or 5% above normal. Well, now we're about little over 2% above normal in terms of the levels. So we don't have, this is not a high consumption type of year, but we're at the point where we have to start getting some rainfall before drought starts expanding. And you can see the low rain chances as we go through the weekend, and then they start to spike up, especially by Tuesday night. Just confirming or giving more credence to the idea the second half of next week will be unsettled. So this is actually also interesting when it comes to fall foliage, because we were talking, especially in early September before we started this dry stretch, about this potential banner year for fall foliage in terms of brilliant color. Well, is there any impact of this recent dry stretch to that? And the answer is yes. We still may we're set up to still have brilliant fall color. But if the trees start to stress a little bit and can't get the ample moisture, the soil moisture that they need, then the brilliant season may be a little bit more short-lived. So we're kind of on the edge of that. We need some rainfall so that, we don't kind of stunt the season overall. Right now, we're seeing some patchy color in the Catskills and in the Mid-Hudson Valley. I'm sure, especially in your drives north and west, you're catching that tree here and there that's showing some changing color on the treetops. And as we go through the upcoming weekend, we can certainly see some decent color coming in parts of northwest Ulster County, in the Adirondacks, and in parts of the Green and White Mountains of New England. So that's the way it's shaping up in terms of foliage. Let's talk about the tropics. Obviously, we're looking for, what is going to be here in the next named storm. Well, there are a couple of candidates that we're looking at for potential Helene. There is Old Gordon, remnants of Gordon, which certainly could have some regeneration over coming days. And then there's another wave out in the Atlantic. Both of these are not given a great chance of development, but we could see a tropical depression. And the other thing we're going to have to watch is the Caribbean here. Over the weekend and into early next week, will something begin to form over the southwestern Gulf of Mexico? That can tend to happen in this September, in this late part or second half of hurricane season. Let me show you. What I'm trying to point out here are these circulations and spins in the Atlantic, and watch what happens. You still have these spins out here as we go into the weekend. You're not showing much development over the Caribbean. But look at how those two areas of low pressure kind of get absorbed into the low that we're watching off of New England. So it's kind of like, they're doing this dance out here in the Atlantic offshore, while be stirring up our surf, but also blocking the weather pattern and steering winds that are coming off the East Coast. So that's why we're concerned that once we may start to get into an unsettled stretch, middle and latter part of next week, is it just going to linger in the late next week and next weekend? So it's kind of like we enjoyed the stalled, beautiful weather pattern, but now are we going to have to pay the price in a stalled weather pattern where you're going to get many consecutive days with rain threats? And that's something that we'll have to watch as we go through the second half of next week. But notice there is a blow up of a potential system in the Gulf on the 29th. Could be another system out here over the Atlantic. Sticking on the beach theme, a northeast wind on Friday, 10 to 20 miles an hour, waves 5 to 6 feet. The rip current risk, unfortunately, is still elevated. The air quality will be good, the UV index at a 5. And last but not least, a travel forecast for your Friday. There may be some thunder showers that could have some minor delays in South Florida. Otherwise, the East Coast looks good. There are some showers that are scraping eastern New England, probably not enough to cause any delays. Prepare for some heat if you're traveling out in the south, middle of the country, all the way up to the Midwest. I mean, even the Dakotas getting close to the 80-degree mark. There are some showers and storms over parts of the Great Lakes, so could there be some minor delays here in Indianapolis, places like Detroit? That's not out of the question. The West continues to be nice and quiet, nice and toasty too, and comfortable in the Pacific Northwest. Here's our AccuWeather forecast. So 7 in the morning on your Friday, it is partly to mostly cloudy. It is definitely trending more clear west and more clouds in the east end of Long Island. A high of 78, still pleasant and above normal for your Friday. A mix of sun and clouds, breezy, not quite as warm, and more clouds east. There is a shower possible eastern Long Island, Connecticut. I'm really covering for that, but actually expect most areas to be dry. 62 for your Friday night, pleasant night to be out, partly to mostly cloudy skies. There's a shower possible east, and 50s for your temperatures north and west. Here's your 7-day AccuWeather forecast. So basically breezy the next few days with this storm spinning offshore, a gradual downward trend in temperature, minimal rainfall threat. That Saturday threat I wanted to talk about was the morning east, and then at night there could be a shower in our western suburbs that you might wake up to on Sunday morning. Otherwise, a mix of sun and clouds both days, and only 71 with a cool autumn breeze as fall arrives again, 8:43 in the morning. Cool and dry on Monday with a lot of high clouds struggling through the 60s, and rain returning by about Tuesday night, maybe even later in the day Tuesday, and showers and even a steadier rain could stick around second half of the week. That's your 7-day AccuWeather forecast. You can always get your weather information on ABC 7 NY. And thanks, as always, for listening to Whether or Not. We'll see you next time, rain or shine.